Hello everyone, I'm Ryan from 2CarPros, and today we're going to be taking a look at how to replace all 8, count them 8, spark plugs for your 1.3 liter hybrid Honda Civic. The 8 plugs kind of threw me off at first, and in fact in the video I ended up taking all 8 out obviously, and it looked like the back 4 had been replaced but the front 4 had not been replaced. So that I think is probably pretty commonplace with these vehicles today. Also, if you're watching this and you're having a shop do the work for you, make sure you make them show you all 8 plugs, because as someone who just works on cars, you see the 4 ignition coils, it's a 4-cylinder, you take those out, you put new ones in, you think you're all good to go, but you're not. There are 8 of them. All links down below are in the description are applicable to this vehicle, from the spark plug down to the dielectric grease and the anti-seize, and you're going to need a 5/8 spark plug socket, a 6-inch extension, a ratchet, and a 10mm deep well socket as well. With all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do before we do anything electrical in the vehicle is we're going to remove the negative battery terminal cable with a 10mm socket or wrench. You just want to make sure it's nice and loose, and then you can slide it off and tuck it to the side of the battery in such a way like that it can't accidentally touch while we're working on stuff. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is remove these plastic engine cover pieces here. Just want to pull straight up with them, just like that, lift up. There's 2 10mm bolts here we need to remove. So this air intake here, you need to remove it like this and kind of make sure you pull this little connector out here, and then kind of wiggle the boot here up and out. It's really only held in with these 2 I don't know, plastic securing mechanisms, and there's 2 rubber feet down at the middle, or down at the bottom here and here, and you just pull straight up, kind of wiggling it about, and that'll get the air intake out of the way. Next thing we're going to do is blow some compressed air around where all the ignition coils are plugged into the top of the cylinder head. And you want to do this that way when you remove the ignition coil, nothing can fall down in there when the spark plug is out. So the next thing I have zoomed up on is the ignition coil here. I'll show you how to do one of these connectors before doing all 8. Now this is a 4-cylinder engine, but it has 2 plugs per cylinder, so you need to replace all 8 of them. How you're going to do these 8 little electrical connectors here is you pull back on this, push down on the safety and push back on the connector, never grip by the wires, always by the connector. And you want to remove it just like that. And we can do that for all 8 of these ignition coils. Alright, so the bolt there on the ignition coil is a 10mm. I recommend using a deep well because it is a domed bolt. Or nut. Could be a nut. I think it's a bolt though. It's a nut. Okay, so it's a 10mm nut, domed nut, and we're going to put these aside. But first we can pull up all this ignition coil here. That's what it looks like. We can put that aside. Okay, I'm going to remove these 2. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is grab our 5/8 spark plug socket and feed it on down in there. I have a 6-inch extension on there as well. Okay, so it's fighting me a little bit and making kind of a creaky sound, which is not good. That means the threads are not happy. So if you hear that sound, go ahead and re-tighten it, then loosen it, then tighten it, then loosen it some more. What I'm doing here is preserving the threads as I'm undoing this. just like that. So if you kind of feel it cracking and fighting and it's really tough, that is not a bad call right there. Okay, so my spark plug socket, the spark plug's sitting down in there, but my spark plug socket's a little used, so I'm gonna show you a trick. In comes the magnet on a stick for a rescue. Here we go. And if you don't have a magnet on a stick, they're available at Harbor Freight for very, very cheap. And we can see these are definitely the original plugs. They are super gross. Any anti-seize that was put on there from the factory is completely gone. So we're going to put anti-seize when we replace these. So it's a good thing we're doing this. And I'm going to show you another trick on the second plug. So another trick you can do if you have stuck plugs like these ones, make sure it's fully seated down on the plug. This one's fighting me too. So if it's really tough to turn, loosen it a little bit, spray a tiny bit of carb spray down there, not a ton, don't drown it, and let it sit for a little while. So I'm going to do that on the other ones as well. Oh yeah, so much better, so much better. Other thing as well, never ever use power tools when doing spark plugs. Yeah, my spark plug socket is just super old. The rubber insert in it is dying, so having a magnet on a stick, handy. And there we go, the front four are out, so let's tackle the rear. I'm gonna spray a little we're gonna spray a little bit of carburetor spray down into the spark plug wells there. It should help us out. And there's really no trick to it, just a nice 6-inch extension, I believe. Alright, this one's fighting me too. And tighten it a little bit, and loosen it a little bit, and get it to play nice with us. There we go. Because if you get a spark plug stuck in a head, it's not a lot of fun, trust me. I mean, it's not the end of the world, especially on an inline 4, but it's not fun. So what I've done there is left the other plug, the cylinder 4 there, because it didn't come with my spark plug socket. Maybe I should invest in a new spark plug socket, considering what I do for a living. That might be a good call. So we can fish down in there for each plug with our magnet here. Now, if you have a good spark plug socket, just know that you don't need to get a magnet on a stick. It's just mine's very worn out. So here's all 8 of our plugs out of the vehicle. Now, there's something interesting is these are both Iridium spark plugs, which are good. But if you'll notice, they are slightly different. So one was from the front set, one's from the back set. So my thinking is somebody who owned this car previously changed the plugs out, which is awesome, but they only knew about the back half because it's an inline 4 plugs. Not a lot of people suspect 8. So it's a good thing you're watching this video. There are 8 plugs for this vehicle. The gap is on screen currently. If you need a video on how to gap a spark plug, up here in the card is a great video on that I did. And we can just take our plugs out and inspect them. Now, if it has this sheath on there when it comes out, there's a pretty good chance it's gapped correctly from the factory. But you can double check if you want, obviously. I'm not going to discourage that. And we're going to compare them to make sure they're the same length and relative size, and they are. And then before we put them in the vehicle, I'm going to go ahead and run my fingers around the base here, around the porcelain, to see if there's any cracks. As if there's a cracked plug, it's not going to work properly, and you're going to end up with a misfire. And if it's all smooth and checks out clean, you're all good to go. Now I'm only going to show you how to do this on one plug because they are all exactly the same and the video would be way too long. We're going to get some anti-seize here, link down below in the description. And squirt a little out on there, not a ton, and then we can load up our spark plug socket here. And a good test before you go take it to the vehicles to dump it over, if it doesn't stay like mine doesn't, I'm going to show you a real trick real quick. Have it pierce the spark plug pierce the paper like that, and then go in like this. Now there should be enough material there to you know, hold the spark plug in place, and you can just kind of peel it back like this. If you can try to trim around it and stuff, but it's very difficult, and it'll probably just pull the plug directly out. Go ahead and grab our ignition coil here and get some dielectric grease and just squirt it on in there, just like that. You can grab a small standard screwdriver if you want and mush it around in there. But here's the thing: the plug is going to sit like this and is going to sit like this in there, so that's really what's going to push that up in there. So we're ready to go back to the vehicle. All right, so we have our spark plug socket loaded up here. We're going to go down into the spark plug well and gingerly apply our spark plug here. And always do this part by hand because you want to be able to tell if it's cross-threaded or not, because if it's cross-threaded, it will really fight you when you're first trying to put it on. Then just back it out and try again. But this isn't cross-threaded, this is on perfectly, so we can remove our spark plug. We can get rid of our paper at this time. We have our torque wrench, and I've already set mine to the torque specification of 13 foot-pounds. If you don't have a torque wrench, just medium tight is probably good, or you can rent one for free at your local AutoZone. No, they're not paying me to say that, it's just true. Spark plugs are something you really want to torque though, so unless you're an absolute expert. There we go, 13 foot-pounds. It's not on very tight. Alright, we're going to replace the ignition coils here. Now I did notice that on the let's say the front of the engine, which is really the right side of the engine, these are the ignition coils with the securing mechanism located directly on the back of the ignition coil. And then the ones that go on the left of the engine, or the rear, I'm going to call this area here the front, actually have it on the right. So the electrical connector is like this, and the securing mechanism is right here. So if it looks like this, it goes on the right side of the engine or front, and if it has it hanging off the back where my fingers are, then it goes on the back of the engine or the left of it. So now we can reinstall our ignition coils here, and they're all exactly the same. They just go right onto the spark plug just like that. And then we're going to put these 10 millimeter dome nuts back on. And the torque spec for these is on screen, but just light tight is good. Gotta remember, these are just securing ignition coils down. They're not doing anything too crazy. And then we can't forget to plug it in. Just like that. Nice and easy. Do these back ones here, no secret to them. Now we can replace our intake boot here. And that's just going to slide onto the air box, and then I'll just kind of walk it down onto those brackets down there. There we go. And we can't forget the panel that shows that it is a hybrid. So those just plastic feet there, like little cleats going to those rubber grommets, and you just push straight down. Just like that. Can't forget to reattach our negative terminal on our battery, only if we want it to start right. Now when you're connecting the negative terminal, go ahead and touch it to make sure it's not going to spark, and then secure it down like that. And then our 10mm to tighten it up. No, it doesn't need to be crazy tight, just enough so it doesn't fall off. So that's how to replace all your spark plugs on your 2005 Honda Civic Hybrid. It's fairly easy and straightforward, if I'm perfectly honest with you. There was nothing here that was undoable or even hard. Reaching over the engine to get to the back plugs or the left set was a little tricky, but a little bit of patience and basically hugging the engine, and you'll get it. It's really simple and straightforward. Literally anybody can do it. It is no biggie. Thank you so very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe down below if you enjoy this type of content. I try to upload every Saturday. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.